Right now, somewhere in your life, a relationship is under strain because of politics, a group chat that nobody opens anymore. And the strange thing, you probably can't explain exactly why you believe what you believe. You were sorted into it, and the sorting happened so gradually, so completely, that it feels like your own conclusion. I am Felix, and that left-right divide that is currently reorganizing your sense of reality was not designed by anyone. It was created by accident in a panic in 1789, and it has been the most profitable mistake in political history ever since. Someone is making serious money from the fact that you've picked a side, and it isn't you. August 1789. France is on the edge of collapse. The king's power is crumbling. The National Assembly, a brand new governing body with no rule book and no precedent, is meeting in a hall in Versailles. They have one urgent vote to get through. Does the king keep his absolute veto, or does the People's Assembly have the final say? The room is full of men who despise each other. There is shouting, there is the very real possibility of violence. So someone makes a practical decision, the kind that feels small in the moment and turns out to reshape history. Supporters of the king move to the right of the president's chair, reformers move to the left. Not because those positions meant something philosophical, because it was the fastest way to count heads without anyone getting punched. That's the whole origin story. A seating chart, a Tuesday, a vote about one man's veto. Here's what nobody tells you about that room. Nobody in it thought they were building a permanent framework for human political identity. They were just trying to get through the meeting. The terms left and right as political categories weren't even widely used for another decade after that vote. Journalists covering the assembly picked up the shorthand because it was convenient. Then the public adopted it. Then it spread across borders, to Britain, to America, to every democratic experiment that followed France's lead. And yet, that accidental floor plan is now the lens through which billions of people understand their entire political reality. Every policy debate, every news headline, every family argument over a meal, all of it filtered through a spatial metaphor invented to manage crowd control in a revolutionary parliament. Felix is not saying this to be clever. Felix is saying this because the implications are serious. If you build your entire political identity on a label, and that label was chosen at random by people who are 2 centuries dead, then you're not thinking, you're being sorted, and the people doing the sorting are not doing it for your benefit. Stay with Felix on this, because the answer is more expensive than you think. For about a century after 1789, the labels actually tracked something real. As industrialization swept through Europe and America, left and right got bolted to economic identity. The right became the party of factory owners. The church inherited wealth. The left became the party of workers, trade unions, reform. If you owned the mill, you were right. If you worked in it, you were left. That framework made genuine sense. You could look at a political party, ask who it actually serves when the budgets get written, and the left-right label would give you a reliable answer. Felix will give it that much. But a shortcut only works when the destination stays put. And sometime after the middle of the 20th century, the working-class voter, the person the entire left-right framework was supposedly built around, quietly started walking toward the other door. By the 1970s, it was a trickle. By 2000, it was a tide. And by 2024, the map had flipped so completely that the old labels now point in precisely the wrong direction. Working-class communities, industrial towns, farming regions, people who built things with their hands, were the reliable base of the left. The right drew from business owners, professionals, the suburban affluent. By 2024 and into 2026, that picture is almost completely inverted. Working-class voters without a college degree now lean right by 15 to 20 percentage points. The demographic most reliably voting for left-leaning candidates today is college-educated, higher income, and concentrated in urban professional areas. Think about what that means. The left, named after the reformers and workers of 1789, is now the preferred political home of the demographic, with the most institutional power in the modern economy. And the right, named after the defenders of the old order, now carries the working-class voters the left was built to represent. The labels didn't change. The people inside them did, completely, and nobody announced it. This is why political conversations feel so strange right now. You're not imagining it. That disorientation when your side says something that doesn't sound like you, or when the other side says something that actually makes sense, that's not a personal failing. That's what happens when the categories dissolve underneath your feet, and nobody in the media has an incentive to tell you. And the reason nobody has an incentive to tell you is the part of this story that has real money behind it. If the labels have already swapped their entire voter base within living memory, why do they remain the dominant frame for all political life? Why do careers, news channels, algorithms, and entire industries depend on keeping that frame in place? That's the question worth asking, and the answer is not comforting. Felix covers perspectives like this that don't make the evening news. Subscribe before the next one drops. The labels survive because they're profitable. That's the part nobody says clearly enough. A 2023 study analysing engagement across major social media platforms found that anger was the single strongest predictor of whether content got shared, amplified, or pushed to more people. Not accuracy, not usefulness. Anger at the enemy. The platforms aren't built to inform you. They're built to keep you agitated because agitation is engagement, and engagement is the product being sold to advertisers. The moment you've picked a team, every new piece of information gets filtered through whether it helps your team or hurts it. You're no longer evaluating facts, you're defending a jersey. And what does that cost you? Felix told you at the start that the answer was more expensive than you think. Here's the price. It costs you clarity on the issues that actually determine your quality of life, your rent, your healthcare. Those issues don't fit neatly on the left-right dial. They require thought, and a system that profits from your anger has no interest in giving you the space to think. Here's what Felix wants you to hold in your mind for a moment. Picture the two most politically opposed people you know. Now imagine Felix tells you they voted the same way on the decision that spent the most public money this year. Not because they're secretly friends, because neither of them was watching when it happened. In 2025 and 2026, over 80% of representatives from both parties voted in favour of increased defence spending. A large, expensive, consequential consensus passed while the news cycle ran wall-to-wall on library book bans and flag debates. The things that fit the left-right frame, the things that generate heat, not the things that move the money. The most consequential decisions often pass with broad, bipartisan support. This isn't a conspiracy, it's a business model. And like most business models, it works best when the customer never looks at the terms and conditions. There's a concept in political theory called the horseshoe. If you bend the left-right spectrum into a curve, the far ends start to touch. And when you look at actual policy positions, not the cultural signals, not the vocabulary, you find something the binary cannot explain. People at the far left and far right of the spectrum share a remarkable amount of common ground. Opposition to foreign military interventions, skepticism of concentrated corporate power, distrust of unelected financial institutions, a shared instinct that the political centre, the comfortable establishment of both parties, is not serving them. Meanwhile, the so-called moderate centre, the people performing the loudest public arguments, tend to agree quietly on the decisions that move the most money. The fights are real. But they are fought over the 5% of issues that fit the frame, while the other 95% passes on a voice vote with cameras off. So what is the actual divide? That's the question the left-right spectrum was never designed to answer. What this tells Felix is that the real divide in 2026 is not left versus right. It's something harder to package into a shareable graphic. The people who benefit from the current arrangement versus the people who don't. And that line cuts across the old labels in ways they were never designed to reveal. Your actual views, on costs, on community, are almost certainly more complex than any two-word label can hold. Most people, if you ask them about specific policies without the team names attached, land somewhere that neither party fully represents. They want cheaper housing, and they also want less bureaucracy. They want better healthcare, and they're also suspicious of where the money goes. They don't fit the box. The box was never built to fit them. The label is a targeting coordinate. It is not a description of your mind, and the sooner you treat it that way, the harder you become to manipulate. The binary doesn't fail by accident, it fails by design, because a more accurate map would be much harder to monetize. So here's what Felix wants you to take from this. The left-right divide isn't a law of nature, it's a floor plan, invented in a panic, then sold to you by an attention economy that needs you angry to function. Every time you let that label speak for you, someone else is deciding what you believe, and they are not doing it for free. They are doing it because it works. And it works because most people never stop to ask where the label came from. That dinner, that went cold. That group chat nobody opens. Felix would ask you to consider whether the argument was really yours, or whether it was borrowed from a seating chart drawn up by frightened men in a room in 1789, then passed hand to hand across 2 centuries until it landed on your table. You don't have to give it back, but you should probably know whose it was.